So welcome to My Surrogacy Options, and on the podcast today we're talking to Leia Swanberg from Canadian Fertility Consulting. Leia, welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's great to hear Guy's voice and to chat today.
Fantastic. So we're going to talk a little bit about surrogacy in Canada. You run one of the surrogacy agencies over there. Tell us a little bit about how you got started and what CFC does.
Absolutely. So I myself was a surrogate twice here in Canada for amazing people who are now amazing parents. And throughout my journeys, I really became quite needy and was looking for something more than the agency I worked with could offer. And so when I had completed my second journey, I decided to strike out on my own and start a consultancy. And at that time, there was myself and an office administrator. And over the last 12 years, we've grown to have our agency, as well as an egg donor program, a mindfulness and sort of more spiritual program called Sacred Surrogacy, and as well work with government officials around the legislation in Canada for surrogacy and what that's going to look like in the future. So we are very busy, but very excited to continue to help people become parents through surrogacy and egg donation.
That sounds wonderful. And of course, you helped Adam and I with our first journey and finding our surrogate crystal. So we're very well aware of the great service that you offer at CFC. How has surrogacy changed for international IPs? You've obviously been going for quite some time. You mentioned interacting from a legislative point of view and helping shape that. So what's the current position for international IPs in Canada?
So when we engage with international intended parents, we always suggest as their first stop to speak with a lawyer in their jurisdiction to ensure that them engaging in Canada is not only safe, but will be an option that allows them to proceed home quickly post-birth and to be named as the parents, which happens automatically in Canada, but that they're able to do that as well wherever they live. So we have worked with fantastic lawyers really around the world over the last primarily 5 years in helping intended parents from abroad come to Canada. And the biggest changes that we've seen are really, I guess there's two big changes. The first one is this education piece and us really having an opportunity to share with intended parents abroad what surrogacy looks like in Canada. So whether they choose to work with us or another Canadian organization, they really are able to understand what an altruistic model looks like in Canada, because there are many places around the world that have altruistic models. However, each one is quite different. And I know, most specifically in the UK, the altruistic model looks quite different. And so there is the inability to attract the sort of larger numbers of surrogates that we are lucky to attract here in Canada. I think as well, Canada has just gotten it together for international intended parents. We have seen changes within our hospital structure and system in terms of how intended parents would pay for medical care for their child born in Canada. And so it takes away many of the what ifs or questions that people have around, what does post-birth hospital care look like? In Canada, our surrogates are still, of course, covered by our universal health care, which is free. However, over the last few years, we've seen many hospitals develop plans and ensure that intended parents understand the costs up front. And further to that, we've seen insurance companies such as Allianz, and there are a few others that are coming forward now to offer international clients an insurance program that will work for them as well as their newborn while their child is in Canada. And it's been quite interesting for us to work with and provide data to the actuaries coming in who are really wanting to take a balanced approach to what insurance looks like. And it is really great for us because we're able to reassure intended parents, where 5 years ago we would say things like, at this point, we aren't sure what will happen in the hospital. Some hospitals will offer this service at this cost, and now we're really being able to offer a product through Allianz or through Art Risk Insurance to ensure that intended parents have that level of safety that has been present in the U.S. for many years, however, at a much cheaper cost because they're only insuring their baby and not the surrogate throughout the pregnancy.
Right. So obviously big changes. I think the popularity of Canada for surrogacy has clearly increased. What are the benefits for Canada for international IPs for surrogacy?
Sure. So for many intended parents, they live in a jurisdiction where commercial surrogacy is illegal, and so there's often this question of, if intended parents are moving forward with a paid for commercial surrogacy in another jurisdiction, what does that look like for them when they get home to apply for parentage? And so for many clients in Australia, in the UK, in Spain, Italy, Germany, where commercial surrogacy is banned, it's very reassuring for intended parents to have a process in place in Canada in which the agency is able to provide a very detailed accounting of the reimbursements in which a surrogate requested, how she was reimbursed those funds, so that the lawyers can then go to court with that information. And it's been fantastic. Another pro really is, again, our universal health care, our shared values with many other countries. I know that for many of our clients who live in areas where same-sex marriage isn't necessarily possible, or adoption for same-sex couples isn't available to them, they really feel safe in Canada. Same-sex marriage has been going on for quite some time in Canada, and we're just a very open country. I always say, we don't have gay surrogacy in Canada. We just have surrogacy. And I think that really is a testament to the amazing women who are committed and connected to their intended parents, whether those intended parents are in Canada or abroad. We are also quite lucky in Canada that we're able to accept embryos from other parts of the world. So whether those embryos are shipped to Canada to provide success or closure prior to intended parents moving to a different way of family building, whether that's egg donation or embryo donation, we don't have the FDA or Food and Drug Administration in Canada. So we don't necessarily have to worry about the same rules that they do in the US. And I think further to that, with the hybrid program that myself and Dr. Danishman, who used to be at the Fertility Center of Las Vegas and is now in San Diego, and I created, several years ago, we've been able to leverage the success rates of U.S. clinics, while saving intended parents substantial money. It is said that a surrogacy arrangement in Canada on the exchange rate alone comparative to the U.S. is about 30%. Anywhere from 22 to 30% on the exchange rate, plus another 25 to 30% in hard cost. And so being able to work with a surrogate in Canada, whether you're working with a Canadian clinic, a clinic in the US, or for some of our clients, a clinic abroad, it's an absolutely great option for those who are looking to save money. And I think finally and most importantly, we are so blessed to have women that are committed to surrogacy for a reason other than finances. And so we are grateful for that, while we love the system that's in place in the US, and if a commercial model came to Canada, we would work with that. Currently, we find that the women who are coming to surrogacy in Canada, because there is not such a financial motivator in terms of reimbursements, we find these women to be deeply committed to, not only our agency or the agency that they work with, but also to the intended parents and their success in this process.
Okay. And so the fact that you've got an altruistic system versus a commercial system that exists in the States clearly changes or potentially changes the relationship between the intended parents and the surrogate. So what's your advice to IPs who are starting out on this journey in terms of how to match and to approach a relationship with a Canadian surrogate?
Absolutely. So, we do a lot of talking up front, and I will tell you that 20% of the people that come to us and that I have a chat with aren't a fit for Canadian surrogacy, and they end up proceeding in the US. And those are often for reasons of, either privacy and maybe not wanting to be listed on the legal agreement up front, or people who are just maybe not wanting a relationship with a surrogate. And so having those conversations about what your journey is going to look like, because each journey is so individual, is really key even before you begin to engage an agency. And so talking through with your spouse or partner, or if you're alone, whoever your support people are, to really decide what it is you are looking for in a surrogate. If you are looking for someone to have a close and connected relationship, and you're wanting to share this story with your child and have your child sort of know this person throughout their life, then finding a surrogate who is looking for that. If you're looking for maybe a less connected relationship and you're looking for a little bit more privacy, however you are wanting to engage with her and to meet her and to know her, really understanding what those parameters look like, deciding what your values are around selective reduction or termination. In Canada primarily, and with our organization, we're a single embryo transfer program only, and that's because our goal is to keep women safe and to ensure the easiest and healthiest pregnancy, and to ensure intended parents are able to travel in and out of Canada as quickly as possible with as little risk as possible to that plan in terms of twins coming early and all of those things. So really understanding that about the Canadian landscape, really understanding when you think about selective reduction or when you think about termination of a pregnancy, what that looks like for you, being very honest with yourself and your partner. So when you're filling out a profile, you really are able to share with the surrogate what your values are to ensure that there's a fit. There's a fit for everyone. And, it's so important. I think as well, understanding what your clinic's criteria are for a surrogate. And many people engage with Canadian surrogates independently. They do so through an agency. What's really important on that is that your clinic has been clear with you that their criteria is a surrogate under age 40 or under age 42 with a body mass index of, 32 or 30 or 35, that the number of pregnancies, the number of cesarean sections, if they have had cesarean sections, any types of medications, pregnancy-related information that you can provide to the clinic, birth records, those types of things are really important, because once you begin to invest in this woman, emotionally, save the finances to the side, but, once you begin to invest in her emotionally, it's really important that that there is even a potential or possibility that you're able to, to work with this woman. Finding out where she lives. Is that somewhere you could spend a month, 6-8 weeks post-birth? I know you guys were in the middle of a snowstorm for a really long time. And for many people, that's, not something that's possible. If you work for an international organization and can be in one province or another in Canada because it works for the time zone, and you can still wake up and, maintain somewhat of your daily life. I think there are so many things to really think about. And so, having an agent or having someone who can mentor you, so another intended parent who may have gone through this process and can give you this sage advice is really important, rather than, visiting it on your surrogate, really having the ability to visit it, appropriately on, an agency, lean into the clinic and get the information from them so that you can really make the best decisions throughout the entire process.
And that there are lots of moving parts with surrogacy. So the agency, the surrogate, the clinic, the legal side. What's your advice in terms of where to start?
My suggestion for intended parents engaging in Canada would really be to first engage a lawyer in your jurisdiction. Find out that surrogacy in Canada is at least possible. Then to begin to interview fertility clinics so that when you find the surrogate, you're able to relate to her what the expectations of the clinic are, what the criteria of the clinic are. If you are working with an egg donor, to really begin that process first, so that when the surrogate arrives at your doorstep or you find her, you're ready to move forward. You have embryos created, hopefully. You've sort of been able to budget, let's talk to a lawyer, let's move forward with the clinic, let's create the embryos, let's spend the next year saving if that's what you're required to do to move to the next step. Then let's find the surrogate, let's get her in for screening, let's ensure she can move forward with us. Let's engage a lawyer in Canada. And often people, when they engage the lawyer in their community, that lawyer will say, okay, here's a lawyer that I work with in Canada. It's really important that those two lawyers are able to connect, and that the lawyer where you live will give the lawyer here in Canada the necessary advice in terms of appropriate language in drafting the contract, and really just ensuring that that everything to do with the contract respects the law in your area.
So, final question then, Leia. Once IPs have connected with a surrogate and are going to move forward, what are your sort of top 3 bits of advice for a successful journey?
So my first bit of advice would be to really, work on the relationship. It is the most intimate relationship you will ever have with, most often times, a complete stranger. So having the conversations up front, really, sharing your fears around the journey, but reminding yourself to also finish that up with, but we're so hopeful we're at this stage now. And so you're really keeping the conversation positive, keeping the conversations on track. Not, if you're working with an agency, lean in and allow the agency to handle the questions you may not be comfortable with. Allow the agency to speak to any issues around the finances, the reimbursements, how travel is going to occur. All of those pieces that an agency really can take off your plate so that you can focus on the relationship. When you're interviewing agencies, ensure that they have the same communication style as you, that you have access to everyone within the organization, including the owner. Really, perk your ears up for the words like, we want to insulate your relationship with your surrogate. The relationship you have with the surrogate is the most important relationship you have. Ensuring that they've worked with intended parents in your jurisdiction and they understand the legal parameters, that they are able to have a dialogue with your lawyer there, that they're open to have that dialogue, that they are matching you with a surrogate and telling you why. So really ensuring that if you live in the UK and you have no genetic link to your child, then we know that British Columbia or Ontario are the only spots that really are safe for you to access a surrogate in Canada. So really making sure that as you're speaking to agencies, that they're giving you the reassurance that you need regarding the relationship with the surrogate, because really at the end of the day, that is what is the absolute priority is that relationship. And then second to that is that they have the information, that they have done their research as an agency to ensure that they can support you from your part of the world.
Wonderful. Leia, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Some great advice, really good information. We've got CFC coming to our next My Surrogacy Option events in London and Dublin, due in September. People can book on the website if they would like. Leia, thank you so much. Really a pleasure talking to you.
No, it's great to speak with you guys. And if any of the people listening to this have further questions, please get a hold of Chris and Adam, and they'll be able to connect us. I would be more than happy to have a chat at any time with any of your listeners. So thank you so much.
That's wonderful. Leia, thank you.
Thank you.